Hi folks, welcome back to Mobility Matters. I'm your host, Javier Betancourt. I'm Executive Director of the Citizens Independent Transportation Trust, or CITT. We're the agency of Miami-Dade County charged with overseeing your half-penny sales tax for transportation. Thank you for joining us today. So we're here at Railvolution Conference. This is a transit and transportation and mobility conference that also looks at the intersection of transportation with a host of other issues, from social equity and climate change and affordable housing to land use and a host of other things. So with me today and here at Railvolution with me are a couple of wonderful guests that I've come to learn and know. One is Chris Pangilinan from MTA New York City.
Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Chris. And to my right, probably your left, is Bonnie Epstein with Pinellas Suncoast Transit Authority. Welcome.
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you all for joining me. And how are you enjoying the conference so far?
So far, so good. It's been great to see all the different presentations and hear from the different people here.
Yeah, and I understand you guys are panelists as well?
Yes. It's been really exciting to be here.
And what is your panel focused on? What is the subject area that you're here to talk about?
Yeah, so our panel is focusing on paratransit and the innovations that are currently in pilot around the country, but how do we move on beyond the pilot stage into a more permanent innovation era of paratransit?
Okay, and kind of the same topic, or what are you bringing to it?
Yeah, we're same panel, but I think it was moving from pilot to not pilot. So, not just with paratransit, but what are we doing to go from a pilot project to just a full implementation?
Okay, and for those who may not know what paratransit is, what does that encompass?
Sure. So I'll try to do this concisely here, but paratransit is essentially a transportation mode that was put forth in 1990 as part of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it's there so that people who cannot use the bus or subway or other fixed route public transportation system have an accessible mode that they can use, and that's where we get paratransit. And so paratransit is limited to people who are strictly eligible for the service. Again, people with disabilities who can't use the bus or subway because of their disability. And every transit agency around the country provides this service.
And that includes here in Miami-Dade County. We have a special transportation services division, I guess, of our transit system that runs a number of vehicles. And so tell me, how many folks are you assisting on a daily basis, or if you prefer annually, whatever works?
Yeah, so every day our paratransit service in St. Petersburg is a little bit unique because we have a traditional ADA paratransit service, and then we have a service that sits on top of it that provides on-demand service to our customers.
Oh, wow.
So every day we're providing I think over 1,300 trips per day, and that's on the combination between the pre-scheduled paratransit service and on-demand so that's a combination of dedicated providers and non-dedicated providers like local taxi, Uber, and Lyft.
And do you charge for that service?
Yeah, so we charge $4.50, so $4.50 per trip on the pre-scheduled traditional paratransit service that Chris was speaking to, and $3.50 per trip on our on-demand service.
Okay. Now, New York City, a much larger area. I imagine you carry a much larger ridership, right? So
we do carry a pretty larger ridership. So we serve about 28,000 people a day on our paratransit service, which is a lot. And again, it's a big number, but it's actually small compared to our bus and subway, of course, which is like 3.8 million a day right now, post-COVID here, or post the lockdown area. So that's our ridership. And I think it's important to put a distinction here, and Bonnie kind of hinted at it, in that ADA as created by paratransit as created by the ADA requires at minimum that customers be able to book their trips a day in advance. So for in New York, for example, if you want to travel tomorrow, which is for us is Wednesday, you must book your trip by 5 p.m. the day before. And then there's this on-demand service, again, which Bonnie hinted at, which we're all familiar with, like with Uber and Lyft, for example, where you can book your trip 10 minutes before you travel. So there is we're trying to evaluate, all of us in the paratransit industry around the country, is how do we help more of our customers get a more flexible, spontaneous service rather than the service that's been prescribed by the ADA, which again is a day before reservation.
So what are some of those innovative technologies or programs that you're looking to implement? Anything kind of in progress?
Yeah, we've had our on-demand program in place for a couple years. So we've always had as the traditional ADA paratransit, pre-scheduled service. We have contractors that provide that service for PSTA. And when we introduced the new program where riders could opt into, calling us, so instead of scheduling the service head, they just call us when they're ready to go. We started that service in 2018, and it was a little bit slow to start. So, throughout 2018, 2019, we had maybe a couple hundred, less than 200 trips a day. We were doing, 1,200 trips on traditional pre-scheduled calling the day before paratransit. And we saw this really big shift throughout COVID, and when PSTA, like many transit agencies, became fare-free. Riders were trying all different services. There was lots of disruption, and a little bit unique to our area, switch over with our contractors that are providing the services. Now we've had a lot of riders shift over to trying the on-demand service. It's a little bit scary, when you're used to the traditional, pre-scheduled service. I know the drivers, the vans, and to trying something new. But once our riders have tried it, they've loved it. It's really opened up a lot of doors, new opportunities, different types of trips. So, the customers that use our services, maybe we're used to just going to doctor's appointments, dialysis, work, grocery shopping. Now they're using the service for a lot more things, like going out to restaurants, meeting up with friends, doing things spontaneously.
And how about you, Chris? Anything innovative that you're trying out?
Yeah, so shortly after PSTA was doing their pilot, MTA started our own before I got to the agency, but we're doing it right now still, where we have a set number of our paratransit customers eligible to use on-demand services in New York. And what it's shown us is that there is a definitely unmet demand, if you will, for people that want to travel like beyond the traditional paratransit trips, to see friends, to go to restaurants, to whatever, do everything that we all do, right?
Sure.
And so we saw just some statistics here. Some of our low-frequency riders, people that were traveling, let's say, 2.5 times a month on average, ended up traveling 25 times per month with the service. So they were getting out a lot more, which was great. I mean, it really showed that there is an unmet transportation demand, and if you have the right kind of mode for them, they're able to be more flexible and spontaneous and take those trips that they weren't taking before, which is great to see from a independence perspective or social inclusions perspective, especially.
Right. So, as I said earlier, you're both from other places. You flew in, presumably. Well, you may have driven, no?
No,
you flew in as well. Okay.
Yeah.
So you flew into Miami for this conference. I don't know if this is your first time here, if you've been before, but what are your impressions of Miami, and specifically, what are your impressions of our transportation system?
So this is my second time to Miami,
Okay.
and the first time, however, that I really used transit.
Right.
So I flew into the airport yesterday, and I took the Orange Line. So I actually didn't pre-plan how I was going to get here. I was like, okay, let's see when I get there. And it came up on Google Maps, which is a testament to the GTFS and the data sharing that's happening, that it's in the map. Told me the schedule, so I went to the Orange Line, got the train, took it to Government Center, and then took one of the loop trains.
One of the Metro Mover loops. Yeah.
Metro Mover loops, exactly, to Bayside Park. I think that's the right stop, the one that's near here.
Yep.
And I walked to the hotel. It was fabulous. I was impressed with the speed of the trip, and
How long did it take you?
it probably took me like 35 minutes
not bad.
from train station to hotel.
You hit the ball just right.
I was able to hit the ball just right. I was lucky in that regard, yeah. I was able to catch the headway of the train perfectly, and the train, the loop runs pretty frequently, so that was okay.
Every 3 to 5 minutes.
The Orange Line was the one that I had to be on time for, that worked. And then I used a wheelchair to me, so I was able to get on and off the train. At Government Center, there was a broken elevator, but there were actually multiple elevators there, so there was redundancy, which I appreciated. So that was it was good, yeah.
So a good grade so far on
Good grade
your
so far,
experience.
yeah.
And how about you? Did you ride our system?
I have in the past. I haven't on this trip. So I came in later in the evening yesterday, and when I looked at Google Maps, said transit's going to take a lot longer, maybe just the time of day, than driving or taking Uber. So I chose to take Uber, but I sat in traffic for a long time. So I almost wish that I took transit. And I think on the way back, I'm definitely back to the airport this afternoon. Going to be closer to rush hour. Definitely going to take transit. And I've used it before. I've had a good experience in the past.
Wonderful. Okay, 2 good grades here. So, I should have done this in the beginning, so I apologize. But tell us a little bit more about yourselves and your professional background and how you ended up doing what you're doing. So we'll start with you, Chris.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. So I've been in the public transportation industry ever since I finished college. So it's been about, 16 years now in transportation. I've always been fascinated with public transportation. I think it's a great way that helps cities be what they are. Like without transit, we can't have the nice walkable communities that we strive for. So my goal was always to make public transportation as best as we could. So I worked my previous career, or previous, I guess, jobs in my career were in traffic engineering. So to create bus lanes, for example, so that our buses can move faster in San Francisco when I was living there. I was working in bus operations before. I did some research at the place called Transit Center, which does a lot of thinking around how we can make public transportation better in the United States. And I got to also do a stint at Uber for 3 years, working there in public policy. And that really taught me a lot about the ride-hailing industry and the TNCs, or the transportation network companies like Uber, and how those work and how those integrate with transit potentially. Before I finally landed back at MTA again, which is my second time at MTA. And to me, I feel like it's just been fascinating to see the different kinds of technologies and different kinds of approaches to transit, to see what we can do with paratransit, which I feel like is kind of the one mode that hasn't had the attention that it deserves, and the improvement that it needs to bring in the last group of folks who haven't had that, I guess, level of inclusion in the public transportation system that we need to have.
Great, thank you. And how about yourself? Tell us a little about yourself and how you ended up here.
Yeah, so I've been at a PSTA for about 7 years, and prior to that I was just in grad school, but I was interested in working at PSTA. I initially came into the planning department. It's a great place. A lot of different skill sets that you need to bring in. In grad school doing geography, I feel like sometimes you get put into like just working on GIS mapping or certain things, but working in transportation and transportation planning, there's talking with the public, there is mapping, there is data analysis. So that was really interesting to get started in transit. But pretty quickly got involved in working with Uber and Lyft and looking at outside the box or outside the bus, these different approaches. Not, traditionally we think we do transit or the bus, traditional paratransit, this is what we do. And everything is evolving and changing. Customers are expecting more on demand, more technology, and we need to think differently. And so I thought that was the coolest part. So when I first started working at PSTA, I said, I really like my job. And after getting involved with the Uber and Lyft projects, moving over to paratransit, I definitely love it.
That's wonderful. So anything else you want to discuss that I haven't asked you, please feel free to chime in and have a conversation. I'm sure I haven't touched on, even 10% of what you do. So anything?
Sure. Yeah, I think with paratransit, I'm glad we're talking about it today, because it is something that, in public transportation, I think historically it's been seen as almost like a thing that transit agencies have to do, as opposed to something that we can look at and see, can we do even better, right? And I think that this generation of leaders today, the people that are in this industry now, are thinking about that, which is great, which is why we are talking about it at this conference, and to see, what is the role of public transportation in general at bringing in people to have an inclusion in the economy, inclusion in society and life, and not just for people with disabilities, but anybody, right, in Miami or in any city. And then specifically with people with disabilities, are we building the right public transportation systems that can accommodate their needs? And generally speaking, as a wheelchair user myself, I was able to use the Orange Line and the Metro Mover, which was great. But there are people who are unable to, or there might be areas where it's just not provided, right? And I think we need to be looking at ways that we can serve that population. And I don't have an answer to this question yet, or this problem, but I think the question is, how then do we incorporate all these new modes of transportation that people have been taking advantage of the last 5 to 10 years, whether it be Uber and Lyft or other things like scooters or bikes or what have you, electric bikes, and make sure that those benefits can apply to as many people as we can. And so that's kind of why I'm in the industry and why I want to see what we can do here. And I think there's potential in public transportation, but I think the question remains is, are we as not just staffers in the industry, but also the constituents that we serve and the voters and the political leaders, what's their appetite for this? Like, what do they want to do? Do they understand the problem? And if they do understand the problem, do they want to strive for those kind of solutions that can serve the constituents better? That would be outside of my 4 walls, if you will, but I think it's still a question that we need to answer eventually.
Okay, and yourself?
Yeah, I think these conferences that we're at are really interesting, where we all get together. And I was just talking to Chris about how there's lots of great ideas that we discussed, but also getting down into the details of, how does your service set up and how are your riders liking it? What are you seeing as the challenges versus what I'm seeing at my transit agency? I think we kind of box ourselves in or silo. There's transit agencies right near St. Petersburg that we don't coordinate with as much, and so we get stuck in our way. This is how we do it, and I think these conferences are a great way to see, I have my model set up this way. We're working with Uber and Lyft. This has worked for us, and other agencies also are working with Uber and Lyft, but they have different ways of setting it up, and do they work with other contractors? Do their service in-house? I just think it's a great way to collaborate and improve and change things for the better, and of course, for our riders.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, so you have a magic wand. You are the all-powerful mayor of New York. You are the all-powerful mayor of Pinellas County. You could accomplish one thing with that magic wand. I'm speaking slowly so you could start to generate what you want to say in your minds. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Chris. What would you do with that power?
There's a lot that I would want to do, but focusing purely on paratransit.
Yes, let's focus on paratransit and not some of the other things we may want.
Of course, every city has a lot of issues that we want to work on.
Sure.
But with paratransit, I would want to make all vehicles wheelchair accessible. That would make my life and my riders' lives a lot easier, because I think that's a huge barrier in the way that we provide transportation today, is that we have to compensate for the fact that 99% of cars on the road, or probably almost 100% of cars on the road, are not wheelchair accessible.
Right.
That people who need to be in their wheelchair cannot use a sedan, right, or even a minivan. That we have to uplift these minivans to have ramps and all these other things in them. And that just adds costs, and it adds a lot of headaches for providing the service. Now, if I could use my magic wand and do that, then paratransit would become a much better service overnight.
Now, absent the magic wand, do you think we can still accomplish that?
We're moving
is it
toward
feasible?
there. I think we can.
Okay.
And it depends on what the appetite is for in the certain jurisdiction / what the regulations are, right? I happen to work in an environment where the Taxi and Limousine Commission does have the power to regulate the types of vehicles that come into New York because of the political will / the environment that they're in. And so they are helping move this in the right direction. It won't happen overnight, eventually though.
All right, Bonnie? What would you do with your magic wand?
Kind of similar to Chris. So, one of the things I'd really like to emphasize is the value of transit, paratransit, and funding for our services. PSC is one of the most underfunded agencies in the country. So the value and the funding, I think, would bring a lot of changes for the better for our community. We did talk in our panel a lot about wheelchair accessible vehicles. So I think making changes around insurance requirements, and in our service area, we don't have the same requirements as New York City for accessible vehicles. So like in our area, Uber and Lyft aren't required to have any wheelchair accessible vehicles. I'd love to change that and increase the capacity so that we have even more equitable service in our area. I think it's pretty good, but we have a long way to go, and we could do a lot better.
Okay, well, let me get to work on finding you some magic wands so we can make
Yes,
those things
please.
true.
Yes.
There's a place called the Magic Kingdom not far from here, so maybe I can pick up a couple. Well, listen, that's all the time we have, so I want to thank you both for being my guest on this show. A true pleasure. I've learned a lot. This is not an area that I know a lot about. So thank you, and thank you for everything you do to improve mobility in your community for those who need those special services. So Bonnie, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of your time in Miami.
Thanks for having us here.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you so
My
much.
pleasure. And thank you all for watching. Once again, this is Mobility Matters. I'm Javier Betancourt, and I hope to see you every other Thursday at 11 a.m. And as always, we want to thank our partners, Miami's community newspapers, for hosting us and making the show a reality. Thank you, and see you next time.